Warning. The following program contains disturbing subject matter that might not be appropriate for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
For many, seeing the fall and Halloween seasons overshadowed with ribbons and bows and sparkles and garland leaves them less than enthused. But what if there was a way to infuse the terror of Halloween with the sights and sounds of Christmas? As families decorate their trees and watch their favorite holiday classics, the naughty children hope they can quickly turn things around so Santa pays them a visit. But not all children are going to make the list, leaving many to wonder what happens to them. December 5th is a special holiday, or anti-holiday if you will, known as Krampusnacht. The not-so-jolly celebration is for the terrifying Christmas devil, known as the Krampus. Originating in Germany many centuries ago, the Krampus is derived from the word Krampen, which means claw, and every year in early December, the evening before the feast of St. Nicholas is celebrated as Krampusnacht or Krampus Night. This pagan creature surfaced sometime around the 6th or 7th century as part of the ritual of celebrating the longest night of the year, the winter solstice. According to legends, the Krampus is the son of Hel, the Norse god of the underworld. This half-man, half-goat creature resembles more of a demon than a god, and was targeted by early Christians who celebrated the new ritual of Christmas. Try as they might, the Catholic Church couldn't disassociate the Christmas devil from the holiday of Christmas, despite their effort to ban him. Around the 12th century, the German tradition became widespread amongst Alpine countries. As the holy month of December dawned, children would begin to hear of the dark-haired horned creature. This creature would enter the towns on December 5th, lashing his chains and bells, and carrying birch sticks to swat the naughty children. The really bad children were put in a basket on the Krampus's back and taken to the underworld. Then, on December 6th, St. Nicholas Day, the nice children would receive presents in their boots, a tradition carried on today with the Christmas stocking. St. Nicholas, also known as Nicholas of Bari, was an early Christian bishop of the late 3rd century. The bishop became widely known for his gift-giving, as well as the many miracles attributed to his intercession. He also became known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. The bishop of Greek origin is attributed with the rescue of 3 women from prostitution. This was done by dropping a sack of gold coins through the ladies' windows at night for 3 nights. This allowed their father to pay a dowry for each of them to become married. There are other documented cases of his generous gift-giving and miracles, but beyond that, little is actually known about the bishop. But it was his gift-giving and generous nature that became the early foundation for Santa Claus, and natural counterpart for the Krampus. Truly a yin and yang of the holiday season. The early AD years were a dark period shrouded in mystery. It's not until the 11th century where we begin to understand the role the Krampus played for the early pagans known as the Rhetians, as we begin to have horned devil-like beings resembling the Krampus being featured in plays across the wider parts of Central Europe. At the height of the Middle Ages, festivals and carnivals became ubiquitous throughout Europe. The largest of festivals in Austria and southern Germany was Krampusnacht. These festivals became a watered-down version of the horned creature as people would dress as the Krampus and wander the streets in the rite known as Krampusnacht, or Krampus Run. Rather than beating naughty children and stuffing them in a sack for the underworld to sort out, the Krampuses would give out lumps of coal and bundles of birch known as ruten. Throughout documented history, the Krampus continues to remain as associated to Christmas as St. Nicholas and Santa, despite his pre-Christian origin and connection to a pagan ritual. The term pagan originates from the 4th century. Simply put, during the Roman Empire, the classification of pagan was given to those who lived rurally, away from the Christian population, and were not soldiers of Christ. The term continued on, more broadly applying to anyone non-Christian. It's important to note that those who celebrated non-Christian religion didn't refer to themselves as pagan to describe the religion they practiced. Pagan was a derogatory term created by the Catholic Church and used for most of history. However, it didn't find its way into English dictionaries until the 17th century. At the dawn of the 20th century, those identifying as pagan took the term back and associated with their religion, generally focused around nature worship. The early pagans were nomadic, and those in the Alps were subject to harsh conditions, long periods of darkness, and societal rejection. Constantly being surrounded by nature and the elements would intuitively weave its way into the pagan's entire livelihood. Folklore from this time played into the ominous setting and speaks of terrifying monsters living on the peaks of the Alps and in the forest below. Ruthless gods cast down their judgments, and the peaceful gods responded favorably upon those who worshipped and cared for the nature they created. As the cruel elements beat down on them, the tribe gathered around a blazing fire. Adults and children bundled in the furs of animals who once roamed the foothills of the Alps. Cold, hungry, and exhausted, the Rhetians often told tales of the brutal Roman Empire annexing their territories and pushing them further and further into the remote reaches of the country. The Romans and the monsters of lore often becoming one and the same. As the earth tilts as far away from the sun as possible, they know the winter solstice is upon them. The vengeful gods must be playing their greatest trick on humanity. A group of Rhetian children can be heard playing behind their makeshift camp close to the edge of the forest. Each louder than the last, pushing and shoving, screaming obscenities at one another. Their pent-up energy from being in near hibernation was really beginning to show. The parents of the kids rose from their place by the warm fire to make their way to their children. Suddenly, an ice-shattering growl reverberates through the forest, taking the adults aback. The children became silent and still, staring into the darkness of the snow-covered woods. The adults, fearing that a large bear had tracked them down, inched towards the children, taking careful, deliberate footsteps across the glistening carpet of snow. They began to quietly urge the children backward toward the fire, but they were too late. One by one, the children were scooped into a tremendous shadowy mass, quicker than any of the parents could react to. By this time, all the able-bodied members of the tribe had gathered what weapons they could and came to the rescue of the soon abducted children. A flurry of ice and snow swept upward from the ground below. The sound of metal chains lashing in rhythm to the clawing, gnashing, and growling permeated the air. There was nothing they could do. Whatever this creature was, had gathered all the children and made its way back into the dark woods from which it came. Through the clouds of falling snow, they spot the massive creature, easily the size of 3 men standing on each other's shoulders. Its red eyes glowing beneath what looked like a head of hair with horns atop. On its back, a huge bag, with what they could only presume was their children. The creature let out a final roar before disappearing into the darkness. Now passed down through generations, the story of the winter demon lives on in the minds of parents, who wonder if the creature will make its return for their misbehaved children. We have advanced light years beyond our early ancestors who believe monsters lurked around every corner. Many of these legends relating to a moral rooted in reality, explained away as a metaphor. But over 2,000 years later, not only in the Alpine countries, but most of Europe and now North America observe the tradition of Krampusnacht. Entering the 19th century, many of the archaic beliefs in monsters, gods, and folklore were cast aside in favor of business, money, and industry. There was no time for ancient religions and fairy tales. Factories with steam printing presses were churning out books, posters, and propaganda. Although Christianity was observed worldwide and its traditions and teachings generally intersected with politics, business, and laws, holidays like Christmas became mass-produced and marketed, an opportunity for business moguls to cash in on the season. Santa Claus was now a fixture of most families' homes and reflected the goodness and generosity of the holidays, once exemplified by an all but forgotten St. Nicholas. Santa was now the image of Christmas, and children, at least for the latter half of the year, knew that being on their best behavior would result in the treasures of their dreams materializing beneath their trees of green. The Alpine countries have been terrorized for thousands of years by the fear of the winter demon. This fear grew to the Nordic countries and had overtaken Europe. As more Europeans immigrated to the Americas in hopes of taking their share of wealth and a better life, they brought with them the folklore from the old country. Suddenly, the printing presses were ablaze, printing greeting cards for the holiday season. Early representations of Santa made up the majority of the cards, but a handful were adorned with a hooven half-man, half-goat creature, often depicted abusing children. Emblazoned on the cards was the German phrase Gruß vom Krampus, translated to greetings from Krampus. North Americans straddled the line between intrigued and offended. How could a monster like this be represented during the jolliest time of the year? Yet, the cards continued to grow in popularity as the tale of the Krampus became modernized and used to keep children on their best behavior. No longer was the reward for good behavior just a present under the Christmas tree. Now the reward for good behavior was not being taken by the Krampus. It was the perfect recipe for parents to keep the kids in line while not deviating far from the joy that followed Krampusnacht. The 21st century really leaned into the lore and embraced the demon-like creature to become an icon of Christmas. Krampusnacht and Krampuslauf have become yearly traditions celebrated on December 5th. And this centuries-old tradition remains as relevant today as it was in the 3rd and 4th century.
Is Krampus.
Many have been introduced to the Krampus thanks to Hollywood, with big-budget films such as Krampus and A Christmas Horror Story, to lower-budget films like Mother Krampus and Lady Krampus. There is no shortage of creative takes on the lore. The Krampus has gone on to make appearances in TV such as Teen Titans Go, Robot Chicken, and less surprisingly, Scooby-Doo. How does this evil, non-family friendly creature continue to live rent-free in our minds and on our screens? Are we so mystified by the stories that for the faintest, fleeting moment, there is part of us that believes the Krampus is real? The holiday season starts with a sinister bang that is sure to have you keeping an extra diligent eye on those little imps that you call your offspring. But be warned, if they get out of line, get them back quickly, because it could soon be out of your hands when the Krampus comes calling.